with a man named Gwen, whom his lover Essel woke up by throwing water in the morning. Then he quickly put on his clothes and went out of the brothel. Before leaving, he threw some coins for Essel as a joke, but Essel laughed and avoided him. When Gwen reached home, he told his mother that he was in the church all night, but with the smell of alcohol coming out of his mouth, his mother understood that this is not true. Gwen saw that it was Christmas today, but his mother was not ready. His mother was not interested in the Christmas feast, so she told Gwen to go alone. After that, Gwen reached a palace and his mother went to a secret place, where many women were waiting for him. In the palace, Gwen prostrated King Arthur and Queen Guinevere, and told them that his mother was not well, so she would not be able to come here today. Then the king took her with him because Gwen was his niece. After this, the king welcomed all the guests to the feast. On the other hand, Gwen's mother prepared a letter and put green moss on it. As soon as he left the letter, he started flying in the air and then burned himself to ashes. Suddenly a plant was born from his ashes. At the same time, a green knight arrived at the palace and gave a letter to the queen. As soon as the queen started reading the letter, as if someone had taken control of her and she started speaking in a terrible voice. In the letter, the Green Knight challenged the king to a competition, where any warrior of the king would have to fight the Green Knight. If the warrior wins, the wealth and fame of the world will kiss his feet. But remember one thing, no matter what kind of injury that warrior will give to the Green Knight, the same time the Green Knight will definitely do the same to him after a year. As soon as the letter was completed, the queen fainted and the letter also burned to ashes. When no warrior in the entire court was ready to face the Green Knight, Gwen came forward. Happy with this, the king gave him his sword. Then Gwen landed on the ground, but the Green Knight did not attack from the front. He put his sword on the ground and bowed his head in front of Gwen. Gwen gathered all her strength and separated the head of the Green Knight in one blow. In a few moments, the Green Knight's body raised its head, and said that he would meet again after a year. Hearing this, the Green Knight left and everyone in the palace started praising Gwen's bravery. About a year after this incident, Gwen was with Essel, and Essel started talking to her for her fame. In this way, Gwen spent many days in fun. One day when he returned home, he saw his mother talking to King Arthur. King Arthur also asked him what he thought about Christmas. Gwen had forgotten her meeting with the Green Knight is just a game. But the king said that the game is not over yet. He said that as a true warrior, he will have to go to the Green Knight. A few days later, Gwen's mother prepared a green band with some women. Before leaving, Essel tried to stop him, but Gwen said that he can't go back on his promise. Then his mother gave him the green band and said that, as long as he has this green band, no one can touch his hair. After this, Gwen set out on a journey alone. At nightfall, she lit a fire and saw that Essel's anklet ring had come to her. She remembered that Essel had talked to her about marriage, but Gwen broke his heart by not giving any answer. Then the next day, Gwen walked to a field where there were piles of corpses due to the war. Then he saw a man who was working alone to bury the corpses. He asked about Gwen's green axe that he had met with the Green Knight. Gwen told him that he was going to the Green Chapel to meet the Green Knight. Then the man showed Gwen the way to the Green Chapel, but asked for some money in return. Gwen gave him a silver coin and left. After a while, he reached a river bank and gave water to his horse. But in a few moments, he was surrounded by two thieves, and then suddenly the same man came and said that it was his plan to bring Gwen here. He stole Gwen's special green band and then tied her up and looted all her stuff. Then he fled with Gwen's axe and horse. After a long time, we saw a skeleton instead of Gwen, but it was just Gwen's illusion. Now he somehow cut the rope with the sword and freed himself. Then he started looking for his way in the jungle, but he got lost as soon as it was night. While wandering, he saw a deserted house from which some sounds were coming. As soon as he reached inside, he didn't find anyone. Gwen slept on him after seeing an empty bed there. Suddenly a woman came there and asked what he was doing on his bed. So Gwen apologized to him and said that he was just lost. Then the girl came close to him floating in the air and Gwen understood that it was a spirit. The girl told her name and she took Gwen to a pond with her. There she told Gwen to find my head from the pond and bring it. The spirit said that a rich businessman had tried to force him, and when he refused, the rich businessman cut his throat. Gwen also jumped into the water to bring her head back. Suddenly the water turned red and she saw a skull below. As soon as he reached the shore with the skull, a fox was waiting for him instead of the spirit. When Gwen went to that house with the skull, the girl's skull was lying on the bed. When he looked at the skull, it had turned into the real head of the girl. As soon as he saw this, he fell down from Gwen's hand out of fear. And once again he turned into a skull. Then Gwen picked him up and put him next to the skull. At the same time, Gwen saw a Green Knight's axe in the room with the rays of the sun. After that, he went back to his destination. When he stopped in the cave at night and lit the fire, he saw that the fox was still following him. He also let the fox into the cave. The next morning, they both started walking towards their destination again. Later, Gwen was very hungry, so she ate some wild mushrooms and gave some to the fox. Soon she started vomiting, but despite this, she continued her journey with the fox. And after a while, she started seeing many terrible shadows on a hill. When Gwen called out to him, a shadow tried to pick him up, but then the fox's roar moved him back. Now Gwen started moving in the opposite direction from him. It started raining heavily at night and Gwen fell unconscious from hunger, but the fox picked him up and gave him the courage to keep walking. After a while, Gwen wandered to a palace and fainted at his door. The next day, when she opened her eyes, she saw the king there. I don't know how, but the king knew him. And he said that Gwen still had a few days to reach the Green Chapel. Then Gwen met Rani, who looked like her lover Essel. After that, the king asked her to rest in the palace for a few days. Gwen agreed and then Rani showed him her many books. But on this pretext, she was slowly trying to get close to him. Then one night, the king asked Gwen what he wanted to get. Gwen replied that he just wants to be a true warrior. The next morning, when Gwen woke up, she saw that Rani had been staring at her for a long time. Rani came close to him and asked if he believed in magic. And then she showed Gwen the same bandage that her mother had made. She said that as long as he keeps her tied, she will protect her. After that, the two of them got close and Gwen finally took the bandage from Rani. Now he picked up his axe and ran out of the palace, before the king found out about my mess. But the king came in front of her again in the jungle. Gwen was scared, but the king had just come to return his fox. On the way, Gwen and the fox reached an area where there was a lot of smoke. As soon as Gwen moved towards the river, the fox blocked her way. Suddenly the fox started talking and said that if he moved forward, he would not survive. In that, Gwen was told to go back, but Gwen attacked him with an axe and drove him away. Eventually, he sat alone in the boat and reached the Green Chapel. Going inside, he saw that Green Knight was sleeping. Gwen put the axe on the ground and started waiting for him. He sat there all night and finally woke up in the morning of Christmas. He picked up his axe and asked Gwen if he had come to fulfill the promise. Gwen also said yes in fear. Then Green Knight told him to bend down so that he could attack him as he did on Green Knight. Gwen bent down, but as soon as Green Knight picked up the axe, he got scared and moved back. Then he got up and told Green Knight to attack him again. But this time too he moved. Gwen asked him that there is no other way other than this. Isn't this a little too violent? But Green Knight said that the attack that Gwen had done on him, he can do the same attack on Gwen. Now he picked up his axe for the third time, but Gwen ran away from there at the right time. He ran away and apologized to Green Knight and went out and saw that his horse was waiting for him. Gwen sat on his horse and returned home where his mother cleaned his wounds. He still had that green band tied. Then he went to Essel and spent some time with him. After a few days, King Arthur fell ill and he made Gwen the next king and left. After some time of becoming his king, Essel gave birth to his son. But Gwen took her son and left some coins for Essel. And that poor girl kept suffering for her son. A few years later, Gwen married a rich girl. When the new queen tried to take off her green band at night, Gwen stopped her. Similarly, a few years passed and the enemies attacked her kingdom. In this war, Gwen's son was killed while fighting. After that, when Gwen returned to her kingdom, people threw stones at her and showed their anger. Essel was also standing in the crowd, looking at her with tears in her eyes. Anyway, a few years later, the new queen had a daughter, but the war was still going on and Gwen's army was losing badly. Finally, his wife left him with her daughter and Gwen's mother also left him alone. As soon as the enemies stepped into his palace, Gwen opened her green band. At the same time, his head fell off his body. Suddenly, Gwen's eyes blinked and she found herself in front of a Green Knight again. Actually, all this was just his imagination. As soon as the Green Knight picked up the axe, Gwen stopped him. He realized that the life he lived in fear was of no use. Finally, he took off his green band and told the Green Knight to attack him. Seeing this,